We are here. We are live. My name is Melissa. Welcome to our online weight management class. I'm HealthWare's dietitian and personal trainer. I'm wearing my glasses today to kind of help with using screens so much, but there's a bit of a weird glare on them, but hopefully we'll be okay. So welcome to all those that are watching live, and welcome to those that are watching the recorded version later on. Today's topic, I just posted it on the Facebook page just about 10 minutes ago, the handout for today that we're talking about. But we're talking about guidelines for exercise. Everything exercise related. If you have any questions or any comments, please type them in the comment section of this video. I'm happy to answer any questions, whatever you may have. I love exercise. I love talking about exercise. I love teaching people about exercise. So that's what we're talking about today. Exercise can be a really important factor to weight management, whether it's maintaining your weight or losing weight. Exercise and just for general overall health, exercise is such an important component. So I really wanted to go through the guidelines that are out there for exercise because not everybody knows them. Most people don't follow them, even if you do know them. So I wanted to talk about that today. I have the handout here so that I don't lose my place and cover everything that I wanted to cover. If you would like a copy, a PDF printable form of this handout, the one that I posted today on the Facebook page, just email me, mdavidson@cmhshealth.org. I'm happy to send you a printable version. Hopefully you can refer to the one that's on the Facebook page during this class. I'm not really sure that you can, but I'll go through everything in it anyway. So let's get started then. Guidelines of exercise. What are the components of an exercise session? Let's talk about that first. There are 4 different parts to an overall exercise session if you're doing kind of a full structured type of exercise session. So we've got the warm-up. That's at least 5 to 10 minutes of light to moderate intensity cardio type of exercise. The purpose is to get your heart rate up, to kind of warm up the muscles before you're stressing them. When we do our exercise class on Thursdays here on Facebook, we do a warm-up to begin our workout every time. I try to include that. So that's the warm-up. Then you have your conditioning. That's the bulk of your workout session. That's at least 20 to 60 minutes, whatever you prefer, of aerobic resistance, sports activities, whatever it is you're doing for your exercise. That's called the conditioning part. 10-minute intervals are okay for this. If we don't have a lot of time to get it all done in one session, you can do 10-minute intervals. Research has shown that those are effective as well. And then the third part we have is the cool down part. Another 5 to 10 minutes of light to moderate intensity cardio activity. It's like the warm up again at the end, basically. So if you go running, you don't just want to stop running, be done and sit for the rest of the day. You need to maybe walk a few minutes to cool back down, lower the heart rate before you're just done. And then the final 4th portion is stretching, and this is what a lot of people totally ignore. The stretching part, 10 minutes at least, or more if you can, of stretching exercises done at some point during your workout. Typically, it's best at the end of the workout when everything is warm. Don't do it at the very beginning. You want to do it when your muscles are warmed up, okay? So let's first talk about aerobic exercise. There are 2 main types of exercise within that conditioning time. So we've got the aerobic exercise, or cardio as some people call it, and then we have the strength training, resistance training, weight training. That's the other component. So aerobic exercise we'll talk about first. Let's start with duration and frequency. What is the recommendation for that? So for overall health benefits, the current recommendation, and this is recommended, by the way, by the American College of Sports Medicine and also the CDC. Physical guidelines for Americans are put out every couple years. So this is the most up-to-date. The current recommendation for adults is to engage in 150 to 300 minutes per week of moderate intensity aerobic cardio exercise. Ideally, this would be spread throughout the week and equates to about 30 to 60 minutes on 5 days a week. If you think about your exercise right now, how many of us actually meet that criteria? And this is for general exercise, okay? It may take at least 300 minutes per week of moderate intensity exercise for some adults to lose weight. So the 150 to 300 is just the recommendation for us to be healthy, not even to lose weight, just to stay healthy and manage the weight that we're at right now. Alternatively, if you have a higher level of physical fitness and prefer the specific type of exercises, you can instead engage in vigorous intensity. That's what it's called, vigorous intensity exercise, and that's for 75 to 150 minutes. If you're doing a more intense version of exercise, it's not as long of a period that is required. Or you can do an equivalent combination of both the moderate intense and the vigorous intensity. And I do have examples of that coming up a little bit later, so you know exactly what I'm talking about, okay? Let's talk about intensity though. So relative intensity is the level of effort required to do an activity, and that is going to vary a lot based on a person's physical fitness, psychological factors, mood, environmental conditions, etc. Okay, there's a lot of factors that can go into the relative intensity of an exercise. It can be estimated using a scale from 0 to 10. It is also referred to as perceived exertion. And you don't have the chart here that you can see, but I can show you. This, there we go. This is the chart that I will be referring to. So you can see 0 to 10, and you can also see perceived exertion from resting at 0 all the way up to maximum at 10. So we go from rest to very light is 1 to 2, light exercise 3 to 4, so that would kind of be your warm-up. And then moderate is in that 5 to 6 range, where we want to get our 150 to 300 minutes. Heavy or vigorous is 7 to 8, so that would be the more intense stuff, okay, that you don't have to do as much of, as long of. Very heavy is at 9, and then 10 is the very, very maximum, athletes pushing at their very, very highest amount. Okay. With relative intensity, the talk test is used to help people determine the level of physical activity that they're doing. So for example, a person doing moderate intensity aerobic activity would be able to talk. Ideally, you want to be able to talk in that moderate intensity range, but not sing. Okay, a person doing vigorous intensity activity would not be able to say more than a few words without pausing for a breath. So the level that you are working is so much that you can only say a few words at a time. You're breathing too heavy. Okay. So when you're looking at this scale here, there we go. When you're looking at this scale, you want to say, oh, I'm working moderate intensity. I'm working in that 5 to 6, kind of the middle of my all out kind of exercise ability. That 5 to 6 where I can still kind of carry a conversation with somebody a little bit. If we're exercising together, I can still talk to them, answer questions, but I shouldn't be able to just be singing a song the entire time I'm exercising, okay? You noticed probably on that chart that there was another column called of max heart rate, or maximal heart rate is what we're talking about. So maximal heart rate is that calculation, the 220 minus your age. That's what is called maximal heart rate. And that's another method of determining your exercise intensity. It's only an estimation, so it's not an absolutely accurate method, like anything really is, but it can be used as a reasonable guide. So if you look back on this chart again, you can see that that moderate intensity exercise is in that sort of 64 to 75% of your max heart rate. So that's where you would like to have your heart rate kind of hanging out. What does that even mean? You have to know what that means to have it make any sense. So I've got another little cheat sheet paper that we can look at. Using the maximal heart rate method, what is your target heart range even for moderate intensity exercise? So let's do an example. If someone is 50 years old, doesn't really matter the gender at all. Age is what we're talking about here. So if you are 50 years old, we want to first find your maximal heart rate. So remember that calculation, it's the 220 minus your age. So 220 minus 50, there we go. 220 minus 50 is 170 beats per minute. So in theory, based on this method, your maximum heart rate that you should ever get your heart rate to if you are 50 years old is 170 beats per minute. If you're younger, of course, your maximal heart rate is going to be higher. If you are older than 50, of course, your maximal heart rate will then be lower, okay? So moving on, next, to find the range for moderate intensity exercise, we must calculate then what that 64% and 75% are of our maximal heart rate. You can do this calculation along with me with your own age, by the way, if you wanted to. I hope you can read this okay. So we have to find 64% first. So you take your maximal heart rate, which for a 50-year-old would be 170, and then you multiply it by the decimal form of a percent. So for 64%, it is 0.64. We multiply that and we get about 109 beats per minute. That would be the low end of your moderate intensity exercise. To find the upper limit of that moderate intensity exercise, we then take our maximal heart rate and multiply it by the decimal for 75%, so 0.75. And that is about 128 beats per minute. That's what BPM is. So when you're doing your moderate intensity exercise, if you're 50 years old, you are trying to get your heart rate somewhere in between 109 and 128 beats per minute. That's your range for that moderate intensity exercise that gives you all the good cardiovascular and overall health benefits. All right. Again, if you're older, it's going to be a lower range. If you're younger, it's going to be a higher range that moderate intensity exercise falls within. Now, all of this only matters if you actually know how to take your pulse and find your heartbeat, right? So all of you sitting here watching with me, take your two fingers, index finger and middle finger, whichever hand you want. I'm right-handed, so I use my right hand. It might be backwards in this video, I'm not really sure. Take one of your hands, those two fingers. Never use your thumb because your thumb has its own pulse in it. So we use our fingers instead. There are two places that you can find your pulse. On your wrist, okay? See if I can do it this way, that's better. On your wrist, find the middle, you see those tendons? Over next to them, you should find kind of a squishy place between your bone and those tendons. You can feel right in there. You should feel your pulse. Another place to feel your pulse, underneath your jawline, right in that soft area as well. You can feel your pulse there. Feel it? I always actually have an easier time finding it on my wrist in general. Okay, so we've got our two fingers there. or on your neck if you like. And then watching a clock, you count how many beats you feel in 6 seconds. 6 seconds. So it's easier to find a clock that has one of those, that you need a clock that has seconds going, whatever type it is. Count for 6 seconds, and then you multiply that number by 10. Okay, so we do it for 6 seconds, and let's say that, I felt 12 beats in that 6 seconds. I then multiply the 12 by 10, and that's how many beats would be in 1 full minute. So that's 120 beats. If I was 50 years old, that would be exactly where I wanted it to be for moderate intensity, right? Hopefully that all made sense. So again, back to this chart, you can see perceived exertion is kind of the easiest one if you're working with somebody else and you're like, 1 to 10 or 0 to 10, how intense are you feeling right now? Can you talk to me? That would be in that moderate range. That's sort of the easiest general way to do it. If you really, really want to get specific, you can take your pulse and do it that way. I'm going to take a sip of water before we continue. So in general, what exercises count towards moderate intensity and which ones are more of the vigorous, heavy intensity? I have that for you. So examples of moderate intensity exercises. Let's see if I can get this on here for you so you can read along with me. There we go. So examples of moderate intensity exercises would be walking briskly. So this is not a stroll through the grocery store. This is walking, intent on walking. That is your purpose. You are walking at least 2.5 miles per hour. That's not super, super fast. Generally, when I go on a walk, I walk at 3.5 miles per hour, and that's certainly at a brisk clip. Okay, so walking briskly, 2.5 miles per hour and above. Recreational swimming, kind of swimming around, not doing for laps for time or anything like that. Biking, over 10 miles an hour on level terrain. So that's riding around town, riding on a bike path. Doubles tennis, so you're not running around as much. When you're playing doubles tennis, you have a smaller area that you're covering. Power yoga, so like Shannon teaches cardio yoga on Saturday mornings. That could be considered in that moderate intense, as long as your heart rate is getting up. Ballroom or line dancing, which I guess probably isn't happening very much, but I know there are some ballroom classes around. Yard work, so this is not like tootling around your yard and looking at flowers. This is, you're raking leaves, mowing the lawn, doing weeding, bending over, picking things up, a little bit more of heart rate increase, right? So thinking about that perceived exertion chart again, or taking your heart rate. What is getting your heart rate actually up into that moderate range? You should be able to feel a difference when you're working moderately intense. And then, of course, other exercise type of classes, water aerobics, general aerobics, other Zumba, that sort of thing would be perhaps part of that class range. On the other hand, let's look at, there we go. It's backwards here. It's kind of strange. Let's look at our examples then of the vigorous intensity exercises. So these are the more intense exercises, of course. Jogging and running, that's getting your heart rate up much higher. If you're swimming laps, working hard to keep swimming constantly. Singles tennis, when you're running around much more than in doubles. Vigorous dancing, that could be even done in your home. Okay, biking quicker than 10 miles per hour, like road biking quickly. Mountain biking also would count into that category. Jumping rope, that's not one that you can do a long amount of time, at least in my experience. So that's vigorous. Heavy yard work, shoveling, digging holes, that sort of thing. Hiking, uphill hiking, and then HIIT training, if you've heard of that, high intensity interval training, where you're getting your heart way up and then down and then way up. And then other types of exercise classes, kickboxing, those really intense type of cardio exercise classes. So that gives you a bit of a list. I know that was quite a lot of examples. Okay, any questions about cardio exercise? while I take some sips. All right, so we're gonna move on now into the strength training portion. A lot of people are pretty decent about getting in at least some form of cardio activity throughout the week. But strength training, in my experience, I found is much more difficult for people to achieve, to understand what to do. So this is the portion that really gets sort of neglected by a lot of people. And that's why I'm teaching the Thursday morning strength training class here on Facebook, because it is so important. And I feel so strongly, as well as research proves, it's so important to do strength training, especially if you're trying to lose weight. As we lose weight, we lose body fat, that's the goal, but inherently you can lose muscle along with it. And so by doing strength training, it helps to prevent or minimize the amount of muscle that you may lose as you lose weight as well. Also, muscle tissue in our body is the metabolically active tissue. Body fat is not metabolically active. Muscle is metabolically active. What does that mean? It means that it is burning calories. The muscle cells, they are burning calories all day long, not even when you're any time of day. Exercise, sitting on the couch watching TV, sleeping, your muscles are burning calories. So the more muscle you have, the more calories you burn all day long, which means you get to eat more without it causing you to gain weight, okay? So let's talk strength training. Strength training, muscle strengthening type exercises, they provide additional health benefits in addition to our aerobic exercise, such as increased bone strength. That's another thing. So for people that may have weakening bones like osteopenia, osteoporosis, the cardio exercise is very important. The weight bearing, so walking, running, that sort of thing is good for bone health. Strength training, so adding more weight onto our bone structure, that is helpful for building our bone strength as well. And of course, it helps with muscular fitness. We need our muscles to help us function, especially as we age. We tend to lose muscle mass as we age. So building up as much as we can and working actively to maintain that is so important. Muscles can also, or strength training can also help muscle mass during weight loss, which I talked about already. These types of strengthening exercises make the muscles do more work than they typically are accustomed to doing. So in other words, they overload the muscles. That is the goal with strength training, to overload our muscles more than we typically do in our regular activities throughout the day. Muscles need to be challenged in this way to promote improvement and growth. I know I've talked about that in the strength training classes I teach on Thursday mornings, but I want to tell you all, it is so important. Muscles must be challenged to help them grow and improve. So strength training activities should be done 2 to 3 days per week at a level of moderate or greater effort. It's not super specific. It's much more per person, okay? Moderate or greater effort, and include all the major muscle groups. So that would be legs, hips, back, chest, abdomen, shoulders, and arms. Okay, all the muscle groups. There's no specific amount of time recommended for muscle strengthening, but the exercises should be performed to a point at which it would be difficult to complete another repetition. So as a general guide, it would be to determine the weight or intensity level that allow you to complete 3 sets of 8 to 10 repetitions with 1 to 3 minutes between each set. It is important. You want to be challenging your muscles. If you do 10 repetitions of bicep curls, for example, that by the 10th repetition, you need to take a break for a minute or 2 before you're able to do your next set, okay? You want to feel challenged to complete that final 1 or 2 repetitions. And again, making sure that you get all groups of the body. So do you have to work them all at the same time? No. You could do a full body workout 2 or 3 days a week, making sure that you do a few exercises for each body part. Or if it's easier for you, you could do, let's say, Monday and Wednesday, you're working out your lower body, and then Tuesday and Thursday, you're working out your upper body. That's fine. Just aiming for 2 to 3 days a week of all the main muscle groups. So examples, I'll show you on here, examples of strength training activities would be lifting weights, of course. That's what we are doing in our exercise classes on Thursdays. Working with resistance bands. We haven't done much of that in our exercise class here on Thursdays because I don't know if everyone actually has exercise bands or the resistance bands, but those are another great option. Calisthenics that use body weight for resistance. We've done some of those. So push-ups, pull-ups, which I am not very good at, I admit. Pull-ups, planks, air squats, those types of things. We've done some of those in our strength training class on Thursdays. Those would be part of this category. Carrying really heavy loads. So I'm thinking right now like moving boxes. Those are heavy loads generally. That would be considered some sort of strength training, muscle strengthening, and heavy gardening. So again, this is not tootling around in your yard looking at flowers. This is like you are shoveling, lifting heavy cement bricks or loads of dirt, heavy plants, that sort of thing. It has to be something above the level that you typically do in your everyday activity, okay? If there's any questions from any of you, live or recorded later, please ask in the comment section. Again, I love answering questions and talking about exercise. It's probably, I know I'm a dietitian, but I'm also a personal trainer, and exercise is probably what gets me even more excited than talking about nutrition. So please ask questions. Exercise is for your best health. That's what my goal is. You know, we want you to be in your best health, to be at a healthy weight for you, to feel energized and strong. Exercise is such an important part of that. I would love for you all to join me on Thursday mornings, or if you can't join live anytime, but Thursday mornings at 9 a.m. I do the strength training class here live. I will be here tomorrow at 9 a.m. and it's so important. So I love encouraging everyone, even if you're not trying to lose weight, to exercise. That's all that I have for our topic today. If you have any feedback, any suggestions for next month's topic for the weight management class, I would love to know. Comment below, send us a message here on Facebook, or write me an email. I'm happy to know any feedback, any questions. So until next time, this class will be again the third Wednesday of next month. And as well as I already said, tomorrow, strength training at 9 o'clock with me. I look forward to seeing you all next time. Bye.